Joy Behar removed from The View. After shocking Kash Patel lawsuit, The View was live. The studio lights shone, the cameras rolled. Joy Behar, a veteran of the panel, leaned forward, her tone sharp and condescending. Caroline Leavitt got that job because she's a 10, she said. The comment landed like a grenade. Laughter followed, but not all found it funny. The atmosphere shifted. Heckles fizzled. Tension rippled. Off-camera, Kash Patel watched. Former National Security Advisor, legal expert, and decorated public servant. He believed in accountability. He believed truth mattered even where showbiz thrived. He clicked his pen. It was time. The studio buzzed. Joy smirked. Whoopi Goldberg chuckled at Behar's words. The audience ate it up until they didn't. On the live feed, thousands paused their scrolling. One voice had broken through. Kash leaned forward on his monitor. He typed a single tweet. Reducing qualified professionals to their looks isn't empowerment. It's sexism, no matter who says it. He hit post. Back on air, the feed blipped to a split screen. Breaking Kash Patel fires back, "That's sexism." The panel froze. Their script had cracked. This was more than a TV spat. It now had political arrows aimed. It had legal implications. It had cultural resonance. And all eyes shifted from the panel to Patel's calm, clear voice. Joy harumphed, but pressed forward. "Come on, Kash. You defend Trump. You protect conservative ideology. You're the one playing politics." Patel paused, then spoke. "I speak as a former national security advisor with no party affiliation on this. When a woman is dismissed for how she looks, that's not politics, it's discrimination." The studio lights felt colder. Whoopi shifted in her seat, Behar's cheeks flushed. Patel continued, "We should judge Caroline on her words, her policies, not her face." There was a beat, then another. This was the conflict. Expertise versus entertainment. Substance versus spectacle. Patel's voice was even. His words were short, precise, and direct. His rebuttal rippled far beyond the camera. Within minutes, it trended. Conservative forums praised a principled stance, even from someone aligned with Trump. Liberal feeds grudgingly echoed Caroline deserves fair treatment, even from The View. Sexism kills my vibe trended briefly before evolving into accountability matters. Back on set, Joy regrouped. She tried to laugh it off, but her tone had hardened. Any further dig at Caroline now felt hollow, even cruel. Kash didn't stop there. That afternoon, he posted a short video on X. Look, I've spent years analyzing geopolitics, legal risks, national security. That qualifies me to say this. Dismissing Caroline because of her looks devalues the professionalism we desperately need. The clip was 45 seconds. Clean, forceful, nonpartisan, but firm. At night, the media cycle exploded. Kash Patel schools The View on sexism live. Veteran advisor fights back without shouting. Is The View a safe space for women? Hot mint moment. By morning, ABC executives were in crisis talks. Internal Slack channels flooded. Full cancellation, need damage control. Pull clip. Apologize. Behar posted a tepid statement. I regret if my words were taken as offensive. Not my intention, but context was already lost. Online, her apology read as forced. People demanded more. They wanted proof she would change. They wanted accountability. In parallel, Caroline Leavitt remained silent publicly. On her verified X page, she wrote later, "Thanks for the support. I was hired for my work, my record. I earned this." The statement had no emotion, but its fire was felt. Kash's next move was strategic. He reached out to civil rights and media accountability groups. He asked them to review the show's public statements. Late that night, he received messages. This was a defining moment. Huge step in normalizing accountability. He didn't just stand up for one woman, he stood up for truth. Weeks earlier, The View probably thought it could ride a wave of polarized commentary. But this was different. An expert had entered the frame. He held them accountable not just for the moment on camera, but for what that moment represented, a broader pattern. The morning after Joy Behar's controversial remark, New York woke up to headlines that hit like thunderclaps. Newsrooms replayed the now infamous segment from The View. But what dominated wasn't Behar's words, it was Kash Patel's reaction. Cable networks booked panels, talk shows reshuffled their guest rosters. Patel's video statement from the previous night looped endlessly across CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. On Reddit, political threads exploded with reaction "RR political." Humor, The View just got legally educated by Kash Patel. Conservative. Finally someone who stood up not by yelling but with reason. Feminism. Joy's hypocrisy is what undermines the movement. Kash didn't even flinch. ABC Studios issued a brief statement. We believe in diversity of opinion and take all feedback seriously. That wasn't enough. Viewers demanded accountability. Influencers with millions of followers posted side-by-side clips, Behar's quip versus Patel's calm rebuttal. TikTok creators posted before and after the Kash clapback breakdowns. One 30-second reel reached 4.3 million views in under a day. Then came the advertisers. A major skincare brand quietly pulled their ads from The View for the week. A tech company reallocated their media spend, stating they were reevaluating media partnerships. This wasn't a boycott. It was caution corporate image management in real time. Meanwhile, Kash Patel wasn't seeking airtime. He fielded requests from more than 20 outlets and turned down almost all. Instead, he gave one exclusive to The Hill. This isn't about canceling anyone, it's about standards. I've served this country under Republican and Democratic leadership. I know the cost of misjudgment. I've seen what happens when people get dismissed based on appearance rather than ability. He added, Joy Behar can apologize, but what she represents in that moment, that reflexive reduction of a woman's value, is what needs deeper reckoning. That quote reverberated. At ABC, internal sources leaked that producers were caught completely off guard. One executive was quoted anonymously in Variety, "We've weathered controversy before." But Kash Patel isn't a celebrity. He's a policy expert, and he came in with calm composure and truth. That lands differently. Behind the scenes, producers began restructuring upcoming episodes. 2 legal consultants were brought in. PR consultants were flown from Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Patel continued shaping the conversation without anger, without escalation. He worked with 2 women-led, nonpartisan think tanks to release a joint statement, merit must be the standard. Across government, across media, across all industries, sexism, subtle or overt, has no place in how we judge capability. He didn't ask Caroline Leavitt to speak. She didn't need to. The message had shifted. This wasn't about defending one press secretary. It had become a referendum on media hypocrisy. Joy Behar tried again. On Thursday's episode, she offered a second, longer apology. I regret saying what I said. It was flippant. It was meant as humor, but it missed the mark. I respect women in politics on both sides. The delivery felt measured, but the public response was split. Some forgave, others didn't. Still others asked, why did it take this long? Back in Washington, Patel was quiet, but within policy circles, his influence surged. 3 members of Congress, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, reached out to him privately. They asked him to help craft guidelines on respectful media discourse related to public service figures. He didn't say yes or no. He listened. That weekend, The Atlantic published a long-form essay titled The Kash Patel Affect Decency as Dissent. The author wrote, in a media age of fireworks and fast takes, Patel's response was a study in controlled ignition. He didn't cancel. He corrected me. Even traditional feminists joined the conversation. A letter signed by over 50 prominent academics in gender studies read, "We do not endorse all of Kash Patel's affiliations, but we commend the integrity of his intervention. Sexism is not bound by ideology, and neither should our outrage be." The narrative had turned. Joy Behar's line had started it, but it was Patel's response that defined it. And now in the eye of the cultural storm, Patel prepared for something larger. He wasn't a media pundit, but he understood the battlefield of ideas. He knew when a single act could shift the ground beneath an entire institution. And as The View scrambled to reframe itself, Kash Patel wasn't celebrating. He was writing. The next part of the story wasn't a rebuttal, it was a call to rebuild. In the aftermath of the Behar-Patel controversy, the media industry found itself split between damage control and ideological recalibration. Editorial boards held late-night meetings and internal memos circulated across newsrooms with headlines like "Assessing Risk in Political Satire" and "Women's Empowerment Walking the Walk." Kash Patel, having turned the heat of a media attack into a calm torchlight of reason, became a central figure not just in political circles, but in media ethics discussions. For a man known more for legal briefs and intelligence assessments, this pivot into pop cultural resonance surprised even his closest associates. He declined interviews from Good Morning America and 60 Minutes, focusing instead on writing a policy white paper, Accountability Without Ideology, Gender Media, and the Double Standard. In the paper, he identified a pattern conservative women dismissed for their appearance, not policies. Progressive women framed as trailblazers regardless of misconduct. Male critics rarely subjected to the same superficial scrutiny. The core of his message, feminism, loses integrity when used selectively. Meanwhile, The View scrambled. Ratings dropped 11% in a week. Viewer feedback flooded inboxes. Producers met with PR consultants to discuss whether Joy Behar should take a leave of absence, but then came the data. Social listening tools picked up a shift in audience sentiment. The most shared quote of the week wasn't from Behar, it was from Patel's exclusive to The Hill. If merit is what we champion, then let's defend it when it's attacked, even when it's not convenient. That sentence appeared in over 200 to 300 tweets, was reposted by several senators, and featured in a viral Instagram carousel by a progressive feminist account. The post caption read, "Accountability Alignment." In D.C., Patel was pulled into a bipartisan discussion group composed of staffers from both the House and Senate. The goal: propose a code of conduct for media commentary involving government officials. Kash Patel didn't see himself as a culture warrior, but now he was being positioned as the spear point of a deeper reckoning. Across conservative and liberal outlets, op-eds popped up. National Review, Why Kash Patel's Composure Was the Win Conservatism Needed. Slate, Behar's Blunder When Progressive Media Eats Its Own. Politico, Patel's Policy Mind Meets Pop Culture Moment. Even The View's competitor smelled blood. CNN's Reliable Sources aired a segment titled The View from the Wrong Side of History. Behar attempted another apology, a pre-recorded message aired during a commercial break, but this too rang hollow. Critics labeled it PR strategy, not personal growth. Then the twist. Caroline Leavitt, the woman Behar had originally targeted, issued a joint statement with Patel. Political diversity must not negate professional dignity. The media's role is to inform, not infantilize. To critique ideas, not demean identities. The statement went viral. Meanwhile, college debate teams across the U.S. used the incident in practice rounds. The debate topic resolved that major media institutions perpetuate gender bias under ideological guises. In the White House briefing room, a reporter asked the press secretary if the administration had a position on selective feminism. The answer: we support all women in leadership regardless of party affiliation. For once, the press corps didn't roll their eyes. Back at ABC, the internal crisis boiled over. A senior producer anonymously told The Wrap, "This isn't about cancel culture. It's about editorial integrity. When our message no longer aligns with our methods, the audience notices." Behar, for her part, stayed quiet. No Instagram posts, no public appearances. But it was too late. Kash Patel had already reframed the entire debate. He published a follow-up essay, Media Mirrors. What are we reflecting in it? He wrote. If we want a society that values contribution over conformity, we must challenge bias wherever it lives, even if it comes from a place we once trusted. That quote was shared by an unexpected source, a former The View producer. The caption, "Time to listen." Civic forums began inviting Patel to speak, not about politics, but about ethics, about values. Meanwhile, political candidates on both sides cited the incident in stump speeches, a conservative candidate in Texas. "We don't need more noise. We need more cash," a progressive candidate in Oregon. Let's be honest, we failed to protect our own ideals. In a rare moment, truth traveled faster than outrage. And Patel, standing at the crossroads of scandal and solution, chose not to burn bridges, but to build a path forward. As the echo of Kash Patel's rebuttal spread, a mosaic of unexpected alliances began forming in its wake. Conservatives and liberals, feminists and free speech advocates, centrists and policy wonks each found fragments of shared purpose in the unfolding discourse. College campuses, long considered strongholds of progressive ideology, saw debates shift from cancel culture to accountability culture. Law schools in particular began hosting panels titled Free Speech Fair Standards Media Ethics in the 21st Century, with Patel's viral quotes as case studies. One Harvard law professor remarked, "This isn't a partisan matter, it's a structural issue about credibility which both sides depend on." Meanwhile, public discourse took an analytical turn. Polling groups noted a 23% increase in Americans identifying media bias as a primary concern, up from 15% just 2 months prior. The tipping point, a clip of Patel stating on Meet the Press, "If we can't apply our values evenly, they aren't values. They're preferences dressed in principle." This quote became the thesis for a New York Times guest essay by a former Obama advisor titled How Kash Patel Broke the Feedback Loop. The article drew millions of views and sparked hundreds of classroom discussions. But it wasn't just intellectuals joining the conversation. Entertainers once wary of touching political crossfire now engaged. Actress Rosario Dawson reposted Patel's quote with a caption, "This is what leadership sounds like." NFL quarterback Derek Carr tweeted, "Respect is earned when truth gets spoken plainly. Props to Patel. Even among traditional media stalwarts, a change stirred." The Wall Street Journal launched a new editorial series, Mirror, Mirror, the Media's Self-Reckoning. Within ABC's boardroom, executives struggled to balance damage control with a hunger for reinvention. One internal report leaked to Axios noted, "We are no longer fighting to retain an audience, we're defending relevance." It was a shift in stakes. At Capitol Hill, policy proposals began circulating, a media ethics and accountability commission bipartisan in nature, federal funding for public literacy campaigns on journalistic bias, a digital transparency initiative requiring political media outlets to disclose editorial funding sources. Patel's team didn't initiate these, but they reviewed, refined, and quietly endorsed them. In response, lobbyists from major networks organized against the reforms, claiming they threatened First Amendment freedoms. Patel addressed these claims at the National Press Club. Freedom isn't the right to manipulate narratives unchallenged. It's the responsibility to earn trust through truth. His speech was live-streamed and received over 4 million views within 72 hours. What began as a televised gaffe had now shaped the early scaffolding of a national reform movement. Still, Patel remained measured. He refused calls to run for office. "This isn't about elevation," he told Politico. "It's about excavation unearthing, where our institutions have buried credibility under the weight of convenience." Behind the scenes, he met with leaders across ideological lines, not to agree but to establish shared definitions of decency, dignity, and debate. Meanwhile, Joy Behar's absence grew conspicuous. Rumors swirled of her planned retirement, but nothing confirmed. ABC's silence was strategic. One senior producer confessed, "There's no script for this kind of backlash. We're in unmapped waters." Amid this, Patel published a digital open letter titled Dear Institutions. In it, he wrote, "You don't owe anyone perfection, but you do owe them consistency, the kind that survives ideology, the kind that earns respect not by shouting loudest, but by listening longest." The letter was signed by over 200 public figures across politics, academia, media, and entertainment, each pledging to uphold ethical discourse over partisan performance. In civic town halls, the question, "What would Kash Patel say?" began surfacing, sometimes in jest, often in seriousness. It was no longer just about a comment made on a talk show. It was about whether truth still had a seat at the table of influence. As the dust began to settle around the heated media clash and growing public dialogue, a new battleground emerged: policy. Kash Patel, once only known within national security circles, now found himself a reluctant but central figure in America's legislative future. Patel's statements, particularly those addressing trust ethics and institutional transparency, resonated beyond punditry. Lawmakers took note. A bipartisan congressional working group convened under the banner Truth and Discourse, spearheaded by Senator Rourke D. Orr and Senator Bristow RFL, proposed the Federal Media Ethics and Trust Act, FMETA. FMETA had 3 pillars: create an independent, nonpartisan Media Standards Council, mandate public disclosure of media funding and political affiliations, provide federal support for civic literacy programs on bias recognition and logical fallacies. While still embryonic, the bill found surprising traction thanks in large part to Patel's viral exchanges and his refusal to align with any single ideology. At a hearing before the Subcommittee on Transparency, Patel gave prepared remarks institutions are strongest when they serve their purpose, not their politics. Media isn't the enemy, it's the mirror. But even mirrors must be cleaned. Clips from this testimony surged across social media. Viewers, fatigued by soundbite warfare, latched onto Patel's clarity. Even critics begrudgingly admitted his tone, a blend of analytical calm and moral resolve, was difficult to dismiss. Meanwhile, mainstream networks entered damage control. ABC quietly announced an internal audit of The View's editorial policies. CBS and NBC followed suit, launching diversity of thought initiatives and recalibrating guest selection processes. Reform can't be reactive, Patel told The Atlantic. It must be regenerative. If you're only changing because you got caught, you haven't changed at all. This ethos inspired further momentum. Podcast hosts, TikTok educators, and Substack journalists adopted a new framework for engagement, Patel's principles. The core tenets: ask before attacking. Debate ideas, not identity. Own your blind spots. And parallel tech platforms faced mounting pressure. A coalition of public intellectuals penned a letter demanding algorithmic transparency. Patel again was cited as foundational inspiration. He didn't call for censorship. He called for clarity. Policy wasn't the only frontier. Patel's public commentary ignited corporate reflection. Major brands initiated third-party reviews of their media partnerships. Marketing executives, wary of reputational spillover, began revising internal training on bias mitigation and content vetting. Even within academia, Patel's influence took root. Georgetown School of Ethics launched a new course, Modern Integrity and the Media Era: The Patel Effect. Enrollment doubled expectations. Despite the attention, Patel avoided the spotlight. He declined TV hosting offers, refused PAC support, and kept his personal social media to retweets and policy links. To his team, he issued a mantra: "This isn't about me. It's about restoring meaning to our words." In one private roundtable with state education chiefs, Patel argued for integrating discourse ethics into high school curriculums. He spoke softly, but the implications were bold. We don't need kids to think like us. We need them to think clearly and know when they're being misled. Critics remained. Some accused Patel of posturing. Others questioned his neutrality. But as author Jamila Kin wrote in Slate, even if he's imperfect, he's holding a mirror up, and most of us don't like what we see. Joy Behar, still absent from public forums, issued a brief statement through legal counsel. "I am reflecting on recent events and appreciate the diversity of feedback." Patel's response was brief. Reflection is a start. Consistency is the journey. With the nation watching, debating, and perhaps for the first time in years, truly listening, the foundation was laid. The next part of the story wouldn't be about backlash. It would be about building something better. In the weeks following the public storm ignited by the View incident, Kash Patel did not retreat. Instead, he worked quietly but strategically, leveraging his newfound visibility to create sustainable reform. Patel understood something the media had long forgotten: controversy might dominate headlines, but only consistency wins trust. His first major initiative came through a collaboration with the American Institute for Discourse and Democracy, AIDD. Together, they launched a public database called the Integrity Index, where media figures, outlets, and political commentators could voluntarily submit their editorial standards, funding sources, and audience disclosures. Some called it radical transparency. Others called it a threat to free speech. But Patel insisted we are not curbing opinions, we're clarifying their context. Across the nation, local governments began integrating Patel's educational proposals into their civic engagement curriculums. High schools in Ohio, Colorado, and Texas initiated pilot programs using discourse literacy kits developed by Patel's team. These included role-play debate scenarios, logical fallacy flashcards, and modules on media framing. Universities followed suit. The Patel Fellowships in Media Ethics were endowed at 5 institutions, including Harvard and the University of Chicago. Each year, 10 students across political identities would research bias mitigation, policy communication, and ethical journalism. The results were tangible. A marked decline in misinformation sharing among test groups using Patel's curriculum was reported within 6 months. An independent study by Pew Research confirmed that participants demonstrated greater ability to detect bias in headlines and political commentary. Meanwhile, the media industry began reshaping itself around Patel's pressure. The View, after an internal review, instituted an editorial ombudsman position. Joy Behar's absence stretched on, and rumors swirled about a formal contract renegotiation contingent on media training and public accountability forums. Though Patel had no direct say in personnel decisions, his influence was undeniable. Executives cited the Patel standard when outlining reforms. At one internal ABC meeting, a leaked memo read, "We must transition from opinion as theater to accountability as dialogue." Think Patel, not punchlines. For Patel, however, the future wasn't about media headlines. It was about the next generation. He began hosting private workshops with students and young professional sessions titled Power Without Arrogance and Silence Isn't Neutral. These weren't live-streamed or monetized. Phones were banned. The emphasis was clear presence, not performance. His personal life remained guarded. When asked about his ambitions in a PBS interview, Patel replied simply, "I don't need a title to do meaningful work." He declined to run for office, dodged suggestions of launching a foundation, and preferred instead to act as a catalyst sparking reform, not owning it. By year's end, the AIDD announced the Patel Doctrine, 5 core practices adopted by dozens of civic organizations and educational boards prioritize fact over affiliation. Challenge with humility. Document before declaring. Separate personal grievance from public impact. Speak as if your opponent is listening, not your echo chamber. International bodies took notice. Delegations from the EU and Australia requested briefings. Patel presented to UNESCO on combating misinformation without suppressing dissent. His insights were crisp. When trust dies, facts become negotiable. Our job isn't to rescue consensus, it's to rebuild the conditions for it. The story closed not with a final quote or a courtroom verdict, but with a quiet moment. One evening during a town hall in New Hampshire, a young woman, barely 17, asked Patel what to do when no one takes your voice seriously. He paused. "Speak anyway," he said, "and when they mock, you stay calm. When they distort, you clarify. And when they finally hear, you don't gloat. Just keep building." The room stood in silence, not for drama, but in respect, because for the first time in a long time, truth didn't feel like a battle cry. It felt like a beginning.